Hi everyone, Mama Marina here with Loving Guidance. And today's Loving Guidance is going to be in the category of relationships, and particularly our relationships with business and how businesses are a type of life in and of it themselves. So, very similar to a human life, you can think of businesses, each business as a type of human, and each business wants to live and survive similar to how we individual humans want to live and survive. And so, when you think of us, a human, we have certain needs to be able to continue to live and survive. One of which is oxygen. We need to be able to take our next breath. Water. We need water because roughly 70% of our body is water. Nutrients. We need to eat nutritious food. Nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, the cell salts, all sorts of the enzymes, we need to bring those into our bodies so that our actual physical being can continue to work at its optimal best. And so there are these needs, not wants, needs that without oxygen, without water, without nutrients, we would die. Physically we would die, our soul would split from our living energy, would split from our body, and it would be a corpse. It would be dead, right? It would be the closure of that life. And so there are these things that we need in order to survive. The interesting thing is that humans have created this type of model, I guess you can call it a model, of requiring, in order to get many of the things that we need to survive, we need money. And so money has become the tool or the resource that is linked to our survival in our minds. We've been conditioned, we've been programmed to believe this. So, for example, somebody who has no money whatsoever, we view that person, we can call them poor, we can call them impoverished, whatever. That person who has no money whatsoever, we tend to think of them as having a lower fitness. You know, if you're thinking about Darwin and his survival of the fittest and so forth, that they have a low fitness. They have a possible probability of checking out and not being able to survive, right? Versus somebody who has a lot of income, like a Jeff Bezos or someone very wealthy, right? Somebody who's wealthy. So that resource, somebody with low resources, no money, versus somebody with high resources, this person has a higher probability of surviving. Why? Because they have the tools or the resources that are needed to be able to buy themselves food, to shelter themselves, to whatever it is. If they fall ill, they can get medical attention and pay for the things that they need in order to survive. So it's this conditioned belief that money means survival. The more money you have, the better you're going to be able to survive in this world. The less money you have, the riskier it is that you may not be able to survive in this world. And that's not necessarily, even though that's sort of like this psychological game that's played, it's not necessarily true. There are many homeless people who have no money whatsoever, and they still survive. Every single day they live, they do what they need to do. And all organisms, honestly, need their resources. Birds, they need their twigs, they need to create their nest where they can safely hide out and not be preyed upon. It's all about this survival mindset. I mean, it's like our DNA just wants to get into that new generation and to get into a new generation and a new generation. It just wants to keep carrying on, and it doesn't want to die out. And it doesn't matter if you're human or a bird or a fish. Doesn't matter if you're a virus or a bacteria, everything that is living wants to continue to live. And businesses are interestingly similar. So businesses are their own like entity, and they have these needs that without those needs being met, they too will die. They will have to close and they will die. It's a type of life and death. So when a new business is launched, it's like a baby, right? The baby has needs. A new business is launched. It has certain needs. It needs customers, and not just any customers. It can have a whole bunch of customers, kind of like window shopping its products and services, but it needs paying customers. It is dependent on the inflow of that money from their paying customers, and they're dependent, whether they like it or not. In order for a business to continue to live, it is one of their needs. Just like we need oxygen, they need paying customers. Another thing that businesses need are their employees, their team, to keep it functioning, to be able to provide their services and their products. And those employees are sort of like our nutrients. When we're eating, we need the vitamins, the minerals to help our body continue to live and to thrive. The same thing, these employees are needed for the functioning of that business or company. They need their employees. Without them, it would fail. And so their businesses have these particular needs. And they too are like humans. They need the resources. That money is a big factor for their own survival. And the way that they get money is through their customers, constantly marketing and bringing in and drawing in new customers or maintaining their loyal customer base. And if we look at businesses, if we consider businesses to be similar to a human being, where they want to live and thrive. And there are businesses that have not so much, similar to the wealth gap that I was speaking to earlier, where some people have no money and we have others who have billions of dollars. They're very financially wealthy. The same holds true for businesses. You have that discrepancy. You have some businesses that don't have a whole lot of money or financial resources to tap into during tough times in particular. And then you have the big corporations that have plenty of assets, plenty of cash on hand, right? And so they have their own financial discrepancy. And what we've been noticing through this time, even back in 2008 with the bubble burst, but particularly through this pandemic, we are noticing not only we're noticing that gap, that huge gap in business, that I call them the underdogs, the smaller businesses that don't have a whole lot of capital. They are dying. It's like them not getting their oxygen, or not getting the water that they need, or not getting they have to fire their employees, so they're not getting the nutrients that, like, I keep doing the two storylines, right? The human storyline and then the business storyline. But if they have to fire their employees and their employees are not there to help them function, that's a huge factor that is going to cause them to have to close or die. It's a type of death. And so we've seen businesses are so much like humans. I mean, they have their own life cycle. We've seen some big head honchos back in the day, Kmart, Sears, Montgomery Ward, so many. I'm sure your parents and you have shopped at stores that no longer exist, but once upon a time they were booming. And who knows, way before we were even conceived, all the different businesses that once were thriving and just, they were the go-to for food and for whatever, goods or services. And and they are nowhere to be found anymore. They have since died. They've closed and died. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're not only seeing people die from the pandemic, we're seeing businesses actually die, who weren't able, they didn't have the resources available, and their needs are not being met, and so they are dying. It's as if you have a human and it's not getting, that human's not getting the oxygen, which is happening, right? That they're not getting the oxygen they need in their lungs, and so they're dying. um, or a human not getting water, eventually that human's going to die. Like, we are 70% water, we need to replenish what we are. And or the nutrients, if somebody's starving to death, right? If they're not getting the nutrients and the nutrition that they need to function properly, they're going to die. The same is holding true for businesses at this time. If they're laying off their employees, if they're not getting the customers, maybe you're a restaurant or whatever, a small business, and customers are not coming in and they're not paying customers. Maybe you have customers, but they're just passing past your business. They're not actually coming and giving their hard-earned money to your business to continue your business, right? To add to your bottom line so that you can function, keep living as a business entity. Um, if you don't have the customers, if you don't have the employees, if you're not getting the income, it's just a matter of time before that business dies. It's very similar to humans, to us, our life. And so many people are trying very out of the goodness of their hearts to continue to give to the mom and pop shops and to, I call them the underdogs, right? The smaller businesses that are not as financially lucrative or capable. These big corporations, they're more than capable of riding out the tide of this pandemic. But a lot of these smaller players, business players, are not able to do that, and they're dying out. And so one of my, I guess, questions that I pose to you is that the goal? Are we almost trying to like do away? Is it almost like a genocide where we're trying to do away with the underdogs in this pandemic? Is it something that's just, and not just through the pandemic, in general, like, do we want big corporations to constantly have that muscle? And these guys down here, the mom and pop shops, the ice cream parlor on the corner, the smaller restaurants, whatever, to fall away? Are they that meaningless? And do we want that? Do we want those who are just starting out, or even if they are established but they're not this giant, do we want them to fall away during this time? Is that really the goal? And I'm not here to say my opinions, but I'm just wanting to put this out there. I would ask you to ponder these things. That's my thing. And the same with humans. You have humans that have high wealth, high income, and you have some that are really struggling at this time. They don't have that. They don't have the savings account. They don't have a plethora of food and can't pay their mortgage. They're not able to, they don't have the resources necessary to survive at this time. And is the goal for them to fall away? Do we really want that? And if the answer is no, we don't want that, that's not the goal here, we're not trying to do away, then what can we do? Everybody, I'm not just saying the wealthy and the impoverished, everybody in between, that there's a whole spectrum, right? All the way up. What can we do to help keep the businesses that are running the risk of dying, the people who are running the risk of dying because they don't have the food, they don't have the means to cover their rent, their shelter. Shelter is one of our necessities. We need a place of protection, of safety. And so if they don't have money to cover their rent or their mortgage and they're being outed, do we really want a world full of homeless people? Like, is that one of our targets? Like, what is our overall goal and vision? And how do we want to bring that into reality? And how can we help bring that into reality? Do we want constantly to see underdogs and high and mighties in terms of business and in terms of the wealth? Okay, that is that the goal? Or are we trying to somehow find a way to like do away with, is it like a Hitler type of thing, a genocide where we're doing away with people who had low income and we only want middle class and upper class? Are we doing that to businesses as well? Oh, okay, you didn't have this level of resources like corporations have, so all of these, we're going to take only these kinds of businesses, and all of these guys are suffering and they're dying out. And do we want that sort of death um, to be allowed? And so that's my question is, it's happening, and it's definitely happening. It's come to the forefront now more than ever, the discrepancies between the big companies who can survive and the wealth that they have and the power that they have versus the mom and pop shops and the local hardware stores and so forth. And these guys are dying out. Do we want that? I really am posing that question, that do we want, and even these guys eventually, just like the Sears, just like the Kmart, even the top dogs, everything has its life cycle. So you will see the corporations and the companies that are top dogs eventually die out. There, as new generations of businesses come in and they do things better, cheaper, faster, whatever it is. You see just like Kmart was top dog once upon a time, and it's not there anymore. Sears and many others. Just like a human has its lifetime and life cycle, it's the same for businesses. And we're seeing that. We definitely are seeing a lot of that. But it's just something that is going on that I think everybody needs to pay a little more attention to and ask themselves if there is anything that they can do to keep that spectrum of businesses and to keep as many human beings, those that are not as financially wealthy and able to survive, and the ones that are, big ballers, they're billionaires, everybody in between. Do all lives matter? And if all lives matter, how can we help those that are struggling? Like, what can we do to help them continue to have the resources they need to survive and keep that whole spectrum of humanity, keep that whole spectrum of businesses, and how can we help those struggling businesses? How can we help them right now through their challenges? They're not attracting the customers, whatever the case may be. And so do we want them to die out? And if not, how can we keep helping them to weather this storm, this pandemic, this time? So I hope that makes sense. I know that was a little bit lengthy and I'm here like this the whole time, but I just wanted to come on here and give you a little bit of loving guidance on a different perspective. Usually I talk about health, self, relationships, and the mystical unknown. And this one I do believe falls under relationships, because it really taps into us as a humanity and our giving nature and how we can come as a force. It's a very powerful force when we come in a unified front to help one another, and when we don't let the underdog fall away or get killed off, when we make a conscious decision that that's not what we want. And And I mean, do we want that? A lot of people might say, why not? You know, that's what nature is, survival of the fittest. If you're not fit enough to survive in the new playing field, in the new environment, tough for you. And so that's a very cutthroat kind of approach. And is that the approach that we want to take? Because we might find ourselves being that underdog one day in some situation. And do we want that kind of cutthroat approach taken upon us, um, if we are that business or if we are that individual that is somehow, some way, circumstances have brought us to that point? Um, do we want that where people are like, sorry, you got to go, and you're disposed of. If you die off, you die off. Is that where we want to take this? Do we want to behave that way? And is there a different way? And if so, what does that look like? What's the vision for that? And can we all be playing a good, solid game where you have some underdogs and you have some top dogs, and you are able to live very successfully in both realms? I mean, in both, across that spectrum, basically, not both realms, but across that spectrum. Um, Even the financial gap between a human, as long as these guys have enough money to survive and keep going, and these guys, they can be their billionaires, and and we still carry that forth, because this is really a survival of the fittest situation. and and I do believe that even the top dogs in business and even the most wealthy of humans are going to feel their resources come down as the underdogs are dying off, because now they're not there to give their money to the business to keep it up here, right? These guys are a contributing customer to the business. So if there's less customers, then these guys have no choice but to come down. Is that the checks and balance? Because they can't stay up here as their customer base is dying off or shrinking, right? So they're going to be pulled down too. So these top dogs, their bottom lines are going to end up coming down as a result of fewer customers giving the money. So I think it's an interesting time for businesses to reevaluate their operating models and some of their ways of conducting business, and how they can best serve, instead of just allowing these underdogs to fall away, how they can best serve the people who are struggling, because the people are dependent on the businesses, and the best businesses can only thrive with employees. And so how can we make a more harmonious dance with that? How can people still have jobs and work for employers? How can employers still maintain their employees to stay in business? How can we have this beautiful symbiosis and allow that to go forth? And can we? I mean, maybe the model that has worked up to this point, it needs to be shattered and just completely reimagined and rebuilt a different way. Is that something that we need to do? Is it possible? Can we actually get our mind to break away from all that we've ever known in terms of how to conduct business, and our dependence on money, a financial resource or tool? Because money is just a tool to survive. So whether you're a business, whether you're a human, it's just a tool for survival. And there are plenty of people who are able to survive without a single penny. They're able to do that. They live off of Mother Earth. They're in tune with nature. That's how we even got to this point. How many generations long before us, and before money was ever even dreamt up, they survived living off of the land and sharing with one another and continuing humanity up to this point, right? So I just feel like this is a great time for us to reflect on how we've lived um, as people, as businesses, um, and reevaluate whether that's really how we want to continue. Do we still want to be dependent on money? And if so, how do we make it so that there is a more balanced and successful way to thrive in this world? How can we do that successfully? So, all right, that's Mama's kind of food for thought for today in terms of relationships, our relationships with money, our relationships with being an employee dependent on getting our paychecks, our relationships with being the employer needing our employees to keep our businesses rolling and functioning successfully, our relationship with our customers and paying customers, and if those customers can no longer pay because they are out of a job, they don't have income to be able to provide to our business to make our business successful, what does that look like? Those relationships. And yeah, just all of that. As a person, how can we help one another? How do we help businesses, and how do businesses help people so that we can get through these types of trying times, not just now, but moving forward into the future. So Corona is just a temporary thing. It'll pass, but the whole thing, everything in life is temporary. Life itself is temporary, right? So impermanence, I have a shirt that says impermanence is the only reality, and that's very true. Everything is there's not too much that is permanent forever. And so think about that. Anyway, how can we make it smoother, guys? We can make it so beautiful. How can we do that? Use your brilliant mind, your gorgeous, stunning intellect and creativity, and your just gorgeous soul to come up with a great new path forward. We really can redesign this and make it outstanding. It hasn't, I don't think it played out outstanding historically, if it's constantly vulnerable. It's vulnerable to collapsing and falling apart and just unraveling. I don't know we don't want to be driving in a car that does that, that's for damn sure. All of a sudden the doors start falling off and the wheels and whatever, something that just kind of falls apart all around you. Anyway, all right, Mama's food for thought for today. Love you all. Subscribe, share, comment, do whatever it takes to help me continue to give you nuggets of food for thought and loving guidance in the best appropriate way so that we can all be better. Okay, love you for now. Bye. And for always.